Hello, I'm Christian Gregory. It's a pleasure to join you here today. I'm the executor of my father's estate, the one and only Mr. Dick Gregory. I'm an executive producer on the one and only Mr. Dick Gregory, a new documentary film coming out July 4th, the 4th of July on Showtime. I've managed my dad for the last 20 years. I've been his body man. I've been his chiropractor. I've been his business partner. There's a whole host of Dick Gregory multimedia projects that are being done. I've ghostwrite numerous, as a partner with my dad on numerous of his books. The man has gone, but his seeds are still here. And in that sense, I'm a gardener. So you may know me by many names. There's 10 of us Gregory children, so I'm one of the team. But it's just such an absolute joy to join you here today on Make It. And so with that, I'll say thank you.
Thank you. And Christian Gregory, welcome to the Make It podcast.
Thank you for having me here, Chris. I can already tell this is going to be fun.
It will be. And it's just, it's kind of a dream come true for me personally, because you and Dick had such a big impact on myself and the reason Bonsai exists, the reason this podcast exists, the reason we even got into film. I've said that many times on other episodes. And so to bring all of that home, in this conversation is going to be a real joy. For those in the audience that aren't familiar with you, I'm going to read a little bit from a bio. And this is the internet, so feel free to add to anything or correct anything that's wrong.
I'll edit real time.
Yeah, so here we go. Dr. Christian Gregory is a founding partner of Gregory Entertainment. He is the executor of the estate of Dick Gregory, director of the Dick Gregory Foundation Society. Dr. Gregory is a board-certified chiropractor and the medical director of Washington Spine and Disc. Dr. Gregory is the vice chairman and sits on the board of Wellness in Nature. Dr. Gregory is the 8th child of Dick and Lillian Gregory and served for more than 20 years as Dick Gregory's closest advisor. He was the point of contact and consulted on all matters pertaining to Dick Gregory. Christian has consulted and advised countless legends, iconic civil rights activists, Academy, Tony, and Emmy award-winning actors and producers, Grammy award-winning musicians, sports stars, and personalities. Christian is the author of In the Shadow of a King, the editor and compiler of the Dick Gregory Collection. He's the author of The Caribbean Diet, The 10 Commandments of Optimal Health, and the executive producer of I Am Dick Gregory, which is a documentary, and a consultant on Turn Me Loose, the Broadway play. And then, of course, the upcoming documentary, The One and Only Dick Gregory, which premieres on Showtime on July 4th. How was that?
Great. Job well done. That is an older one. It's a lot of the fluff, as you get older, you start to tighten things up. So, and that was kind of my analog one. The digital one's a little more streamlined. I Am Dick Gregory is now the one and only Dick Gregory. So
gotcha.
The name and title has changed and evolved. Really, how it came to be is a whole separate documentary on its own. So, yeah, but yes, that's similar to my dad. It's difficult to kind of, my dad always encouraged us to own our own things, and the importance of what you and Nick are doing to own our own media companies. And so in 2021, it's just so heartwarming as we come out of this pandemic, just to see how many, Black folks are controlling and have more of a controlling hand of the media that impacts our community. Before, in my dad's era, it was literally 3 or 4, executive producers at 3 or 4 networks, because that's all that existed, probably over a shot of bourbon, decided what stories got told. So, now the silver lining of the day and age we live in, yes, there's more out there, and in more, a lot can get lost. But if you take your time, there's plenty of those needles in the haystack. You just need to know how to search for them. And that's different from before. Before we had too little information. Now we have too much information. And we should be duty bound to find answers and to search for truth. My dad used to read so many newspapers because he'd always say He was looking for cracks in the fiber. And I encourage all of us, the fiber being the matrix, I encourage all of us to seek those cracks in the fiber and seek that truth. Now, I should also say, my dad was not a, red or blue pill guy. He was a both. Many times we would go out, we'd be on the front line at a march, and then we'd go get a nice massage at the Ritz-Carlton afterwards. The duality of, joy and pain is profoundly important, because all work, no play will burn all of us out. At the end of the day, we're all mammals. 206 bones, 605 muscles. What we choose to do with our bodies is on us, but we have to definitely remember that we're human, we're not machines, and take care of those creature comfort things. And Dick Gregory did an amazing job balancing those two.
I agree that you can be an activist and still enjoy your life. And right now there's a movement to sort of virtue signal around, well, if I'm an activist, then I also need to live in a hostel. No, you don't. You need to win a little bit yourself so you can help others win. But just for this audience, for those, it's a worldwide audience, global audience. For those who aren't familiar, can you summarize the one and only Dick Gregory? Not the movie, but the man.
So, I would say no, but out of my love and appreciation for you all, I'm going to give it a fair shot. So okay. Part of the reason we have, Dick Gregory with the 10 multicolored silhouettes is the man metamorphed so many times that there's no capsular, kind of synopsis of who he was. I'm so happy that this film is out now, because I can turn people, say, you never heard of Dick Gregory? If you're interested, go and watch the 110 minutes, and then we can chop it up intelligently on the backside, because what does your dad do was always a profoundly difficult question for us Gregorys. And it really depends which one of these iterations folks were talking about. So in short, he was a breakout high school and college athlete, 1 miler, set multiple state records. From there, he went to college. He continued to run. He was drafted into the military. And the military is where he really started to refine his skills as an entertainer. My dad used to sing and play the bongos first before he became a comedian. He was always funny, even during his bongo routine. Just the thought of Dick Gregory playing the bongos will make some. Growing up on the farm, my dad had bongos, and I just thought they were probably gifted to him from somewhere. I never realized that was his gateway onto a stage. And so from there, he came out of the military, moved to Chicago, started working the local kind of Black comic circuit. And then he just exploded. My dad would always say preparation and opera, not that he came up with this statement, but he would remind us preparation, and the definition of luck is preparation met with opportunity. And so we were always prepared, because he insisted we were always prepared. And he was prepared when the opportunity at the Playboy Club presented itself, and he capitalized on it. And like a rocket, just a rocket trajectory from pennies to multimillionaire. And that in itself can be dangerous. We see that in real life. And so kind of rags to riches story. Dick Gregory was a rags to riches, to rags to riches, to rags to riches, to rags to riches. It was a spectrum that he rode like a swing. And he loved that, because it was the rags that he got his strength. In most metamorphosis, as we go through that process, there is pain and discomfort that helps to evolve. He thrived, as odd as it may sound, on discomfort. So it was during those transitions. And so when in 1963, when Medgar Evers called him to come down to Mississippi, he got, I don't want to say bit by the bug, he got pissed at the injustice. And as a result of that, he called my mom, just a loving couple that always made decisions together, called my mom. At that point, only my sister Michelle and Lynn were born. So it was 2 of the 10. And he said, are you willing to go back to where we just were, to the struggle for right? And my mom, knee-jerk response said, absolutely. First of all, they hadn't even been living high on the virtual hog that long. So sometimes it's a little easier to go back. And so they said, look, we got this all wrong. We're not finding the comfort, the joy, the solace that we thought we would find while we're looking at, our people struggling. And from that, it wasn't a slow pivot. I mean, he always turned on a dime. Dick Gregory was no cruise ship turning. He was a motorbike. He turned on a dime and became a civil rights activist. And so civil rights activist to nutritionist to social critic. And up until the day we lost him in 2017, he was instilling knowledge and information. And even with him now gone, that beat continues to go on. And it's a blessing. I'm just elated to play the small role I play in keeping his legacy alive. All of us Gregory children have never tried to fill our father's shoes. What was important to us was to keep them shine and keep them out there as an example and as a beacon of hope for the rest of the world to realize you can make a difference.
Thank you for that. That is a great summary. And it's funny, he did so much that you probably I could have asked that one question and that could have been the entire interview. Podcast. That's how much he's done. Yeah. And you're right about him being a motorbike. I mean, even to the day, and correct me if I'm wrong, to the day of his transitioning, he had 10 shows booked, right?
So that week, so the week he passed, the week he was in the hospital, that week he had 10. A lot of folks, if they're not in comedy, they don't realize that, most of your comedy clubs, they'll book you for 2 or 3 shows in a night. It's the 5 show, the 7, the late show. Mm-hmm. So my dad and Paul Mooney had been crisscrossing the country as the godfathers of comedy. And they had some of the shows he had booked with Paul together. Some were individual Dick Gregory shows, but he had 10 shows. There were 10 shows. And I know because I was the one doing the post, rescheduling those shows and being very careful not to alarm people, because at the time, we didn't think it was something that serious. And so we were being very careful not to alarm people and to let them know, Dick is he's alive and well. The only person who seemed not to think, but was certain that it was something bigger than what we all thought was Dick Gregory. He kept telling me that, kept telling the doctors that, all of his, Minister Farrakhan called and talked to him for hours. Bill Cosby called and talked for hours. All of these people that he had been back in the trenches during, this 1968 was like a second, civil war. I mean, these are things in our comfort that we grew up in, even to reflect back on it. I mean, it's like reflecting back on the Civil War. It's like, hey, took a musket shot to the stomach. Like, let's go boost the Wi-Fi signal and turn the AC up. So we just can't relate. And so he could relate, they could relate. Minister Farrakhan's call with my dad and just the deep conversation they did about Martin, Medgar, Malcolm. Oh, it was so heartwarming. My dad had a tear in his eye the entire time. We all did, but not a tear of sadness, a tear of joy, because all of the names that these two frontline, you think soldier, you think violent. They were soldiers for love. I mean, they were soldiers for righteousness, for right, not wrong. You think of that and you think most of them didn't make it. They didn't live a full life cycle. And so in Dick Gregory's life, you see a little bit of what Dr. King could have continued to bring to the world, what Medgar Evers could have continued to bring to the world, what Malcolm X, and so many names we don't know. We know the names that we can kind of rapid recall response and list off, but there was tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people. You think of lynching. Lynching wasn't an effective way of genocide. That wasn't the purpose. It was terrorism. It was to show you your place. I would have to kill 10,000 people silently as opposed to lynching one person publicly. That was a form of terror. That was domestic terrorism. So when we look back and we think of what these folks endured, and then we get hypercritical about one little thing they did when they were 80 or one big thing. I don't want to belittle anything, but it's important that we view folks' life in their totality. In America, we're always told that we're a nation of, law and order. My dad in his lifetime, he always saw the duality of that law and order. Some folks would say, show me the man, I'll tell you the law. And so in our generation, we're still seeing the duality of that, nowhere near what it was in my dad's time, nowhere near. And he was clear on that. We've made significant advances, but January 6th very clearly showed us that there is still two systems of justice in this country. And for me, selfishly, in my little Dick Gregory moment, I was so happy when all those white folks did leave and were not arrested, because I said, for the next 8 months, we're going to be watching, these folks get arrested and do perp walks. So what would have been over in 30 days is now going to be elong. Oh, we got another one. We got another one. So just to remind folks as a drip, the disservice that was, and you don't even need to do the exercise, quite honestly, Chris, of thinking of what if that was black and brown folks that did that. White folks don't even need to do that exercise. It's so obvious that there's a double standard that continues to be there, but definitively, my dad would describe it as a pendulum swing. Mm-hmm. The original, you hear people now, cancel culture, cancel. You get no more cancel culture than, 400 years of slavery. You get no more cancel culture than lynching teenagers from whistling. I don't want to hear about cancel. So some, white grandma says the N-word on her bus route and gets fired. And now I'm supposed to feel bad. When other folks were getting canceled, they couldn't go and get another job. Cancel culture for them meant they ceased to exist. So that falls on deaf ears. Yes, it will be nice when things, as all pendulum swings, they'll recalibrate and they'll come to an equal medium. Hopefully we see that in our lifetime. With Barack Obama, we saw a sense of what, not a post-racial America, but a post-racial black man. Barack Obama, think about this, if you or I were the president, the last thing we'd be doing is playing basketball every day, inviting people over for a fried chicken summit. Like, this man lived his life without all of the baggage of stereotypes. And part of it was because how he was raised. It shows us a glimpse of, once we shake all this baggage, there's hope. There's real hope there. And I always explain, you have grandma, and first of all, white supremacists are not just white. Black folks can have a white supremacist mentality. Women can have a sexist mentality. So you look now, and I always say, you have grandma and grandpa upstairs, with their Klan's hood on. And then you have the parents, not with a Klan hood, but share many of the grandparents' philosophies and views on life. But then you have the grandchildren in the basement dancing to Jay-Z and Beyonce and couldn't have a care in the world about race. A lot of this is going to die off. We're not going to change the hearts and minds of folks. They may behave because they know they have to, but my hope for the future is, and my dad was always laser focused on the youth, is that the youth will recalibrate and sort and fix this thing. And his goal was always, our goal wasn't to just completely stop the Klan, white supremacy, alt-right. It was to take their hoods off. And that mission accomplished, because now these folks are out there in all their glory and they're just being identified and dealt with, You have grandchildren turning against their grandparents because right is right, wrong is wrong. And my dad would always say that some of the most powerful forces on the earth don't make a sound. Get up early in the morning and watch the sun smack nighttime out the sky without making a sound. Big, forceful movements, they're bigger than us. And when you really think of the significant amount of time that human beings occupied this planet, what we've went through was a very small part of melanated people's history. And it's time to really start learning about more and focusing on more so we can really instill that promise into young folks. But it is, it's to see media platforms like what you've developed. And again, kudos to you and Nick. You all are family here, so shame on me for not getting on here sooner. But I'm proud of the work that's being done. It's impactful. It's meaningful when people who love a community, love a people, play a role. And I'm not saying you got to write, direct. No one other than Black folks can be part of these films. I'm not saying that at all. But it's important that people that love and definitely respect the story that's being told. Similar to policing, you got to have people that, love and respect the community. If not, what we've dealt with for hundreds of years becomes what they think is normal and acceptable behavior.
Absolutely. I have so many notes here already. We might have to marathon this one. I'll touch on the family part of it because you've mentioned that a few times now. And so to give the audience a sense of who you are and how you got here today, 10 children, 9 other siblings, large family, 100-acre farm in Plymouth, Massachusetts you grew up on. How was it like growing up with that many siblings? And then you had the celebrity of your dad. Did you get shielded from the public notoriety?
Great question. Yes, by just the geography of it all, just by where we were located. It was a 300-acre farm that abutted right up to another 300 acres that abutted up against another 1,000 acres that then abutted up a 3,000 acre Massachusetts state forest. So when we wanted lots of kids, but when we wanted to disappear and get off the grid, it was easy, and we did it frequently. So we would go, from all 10 of, we had our own 5-on-5 for any sport we wanted to play. So we didn't have to go and get neighbors to play pickup games. There was no TVs in the house. So it was books and it was activity. I mean, we did what mammals were supposed to do. We got up and played hard. And then when you got tired of each other and just wanted your own time, I had so many different, I had an A fort, a B fort, and a C fort. So if one of my siblings were in my A fort, I'd go to my backup fort. We were like Rambo out in the woods. We had so many places. I had books at different places, snacks at different places, tripwires set up. No, it was like we grew up on the prairie, man. It was, and for us, there was no sugar, no refined white flour in the home. So when we could ever get to one of the neighbors and, one of them give us like a Snickers bar or something, the high we would get from high fructose corn syrup was definitely the equivalent of like, a heroin dose. So it was, we were scavengers, it was hunters and gatherers. I mean, it was just a thing. I mean, barefoot, shoes, whatever. But whenever my dad came home, and I really want to deal with this, when my dad came home, it was literally like, a scene out of Coming to America. We would line up, not literally, but like just excited to see our dad and hear the stories from the front line, to see the trappings of war, the newspaper article, the certificates he had won, the statues, the story. He always came back with folks. So he would come back and, he'd come back when Larry Flint was with him. It was the oddest group of folks who would come to the farm. My dad was close with so many folks. I mean, Stevie Wonder, Marvin Gaye, the Jackson family. So this was the Gregory farm. My dad also did a lot of drug detox. So a lot of, very successful athletes would come to the farm, and there were multiple properties there. So he would bring them, and he would pink Himalayan sea salt, like alarming amounts of it, soaking in tubs, just to alkalize the body and to help people to beat nutrition, to use nutrition to beat their chemical dependency, but then tough one-on-one counseling with Dick Gregory. And that was you have to have, when you're addicted to substances, to have someone you love and respect be there, eye to eye with you for 24, 48, 72 hours was the primary reason he saw such significant success rates. And none of these things were things he did for profit. These were things that he did for his love for humanity and his fellow brothers and sisters that he knew had a bigger platform, a bigger role, and that, addiction was one of the things that got in the way of. But for us Gregory's, for all children, if the life cycle does what it's supposed to do, you're the child, Then you get older, you become almost like peers with your parent. You help them with things, and then that slowly role reversal, and you become like the parent. It's always very respectful, and they become like the child. And as they get older, as Miss Cicely Tyson would always say to me, once an adult, twice a child. As they get older, many times it is very childlike. And so the respect of treating them as a parent, but also providing the needs that they need. And so many entertainers, when they get on a stage and a light hits them, they reverse age right before your eyes. So I'd watch my dad go from a real old 84 to a spry 64 in a matter of seconds because his shows were in his frontal lobe. And dementia, Alzheimer's, so many other things, they typically don't impact the frontal lobe. So when it's, hey, this was his happy spot. So the stage, airports, and hotels and train stations were where my dad would reverse. Whenever he was having a rough day, we would go and get lunch. He didn't know that's why I was doing it. Here at Reagan National Airport, well, he would never call it Reagan. At National Airport, we would go to National Airport and get lunch, because just being in there just would bring him back. And it was just, the human mind and body is so incredible, specifically his mind, because he had seen so much. So I don't think any of my siblings, and 10 surviving, we lost my one brother, Richard Jr., long before I was born. Really, Richard Jr.'s death is the reason my dad firmly believed he was not with Medgar Evers on the night that Medgar was assassinated. So technically there's 11 of us Gregory children, and we all kind of, live and champion and carry on, the junior. He's the only junior in the family, and honor and respect his name and legacy. The love, and my dad would say this all the time, Hitler had a mother and father at home. Jack the Ripper had a mother and father at home. Having both parents physically present doesn't mean they're a presence in your life. He said, as he would say, very colorful, half of these N-words aren't home when they're home. So he would have his own, and I think it bothered him a little bit more than it did my mom or any of the siblings, especially when we were younger, because, our hearts overflowed with love and joy from the man. I mean, there was no, oh, we miss daddy, because we understood he was out on the front line. It wasn't like, Papa's a Rolling Stone. No, Papa's up there, a bulldozer for justice. And he's on the front line like a member of SEAL Team 6 doing the ugly things that other folks aren't willing to do. So, us 10 little Gregory ducklings could sleep comfortably at night. And comfortably is quite how our expression was. I mean, finest schools, the finest, things weren't that material back then. So it wasn't like, you couldn't look at me or any of our friends and tell, whose dad was a multimillionaire, whose dad was a celebrity, who's one. We all just, and that's one of the real silver linings about that back then. There were no smartphones, there were no, it just was none of that. There was no internet. You just, and I'm not saying, the world's a worse place because of it. It all happens for a reason. It all plays a role. Innovation and technology. I have multiple technology companies, so I embrace that. I understand it. I feel like we all need to. But for my dad, he, in many articles, he kind of laid the foundation of kind of like, oh, I was never home. And other folks picked that up to be, oh, absentee dad. That wasn't what it was at all. It was my job. Was like, he's an astronaut. He's on the moon. Like, we knew he was somewhere doing something meaningful. And when he came home, that's a great way to put it. Quality versus, quantity. When he came home, the quality time, I can remember vividly, hey, your dad will be home at 3 a.m. We were all up. And so he would come. My dad, sadly, had all of his teeth kicked out when he was 14, shoe shine boy, by a racist white man that didn't like that he touched a white woman's foot while he was shining her shoe. So for his lifetime, he had false teeth. I only reference this to say, when he would take his teeth out, it would scare the hell out of us kids. So he would come home, take his teeth out, put them in the glass, come out, moan like the mummy a few times. Us 10 kids would haul ass up into the hills.
Yeah.
We thought he was searching for us. He went right back inside and went sound asleep for hours, man. Every little leaf we thought was him, every little tree branch. He entertained us even when he wasn't out there actively engaging and entertaining us. So the young part, and I say young, like high school and down, was one kind of interaction with my dad. When we went to college, all of us were required to go to HBCUs. When we were in college, my dad had arrangements with all the schools, like, you take care of my kids, I'll come and lecture at the school each semester. So, I saw him, that's when that relationship started to change a little bit. And, sometimes as our parents stop being, okay, I got to be protected. Like, I never heard my dad swear at home. First time I heard him swear, I was elated. I was like, and to see how good he was at it, I said, I got to step my game way up. And so part of the reason, many of us Gregory's curse as well as we do, because, the master showed us early on and when it's appropriate. But I was just shocked that for my whole 18 years of life, I had never heard my dad not slip once. And it just shows his laser focus and just kind of aptitude. But as we post grad school and post that, when the veil starts coming up and you see, hey, we're peers now, that may have rattled the cage. I don't say rattled the cage, but some of my siblings, like for me, it was like, hey, we're the same person. Like, I love the wild jokes. I love the inappropriate commentary, especially done in a protective way, not poking fun at others, but always very lovingly. I mean, Dick Gregory's best material was never on a stage. I mean, it was in a sidebar and just the most immediate wit-filled wisdom that you would laugh about for weeks, still now reflecting back on. So fathering was very different from him. Loving, not at all. The love was omnipresent, and that went throughout our lifetime. I mean, any of us Gregory children that needed anything, he would have tripped over himself to get there. Most parents won't admit it, but they have a favorite. He would have tripped over himself to get it, whoever it was. He definitively was profoundly proud of his children.
Yeah, and parents never admit that. But kids always want to know. They always ask. As a father, like I get questions all the time. Who's your favorite? Just who do you like the most?
And it's not all or none. It can be like, I like this one the most when we're laughing. I like this one the most. Right. It's not all. It doesn't all fit in one bucket.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. There's something I've always wondered, which is you have 10 siblings. How did this fall to you? I mean, you've been his healthcare provider and his manager for 20 plus years. Like, why you? Why did it? Why not Ayanna or one of the other siblings?
Great question. And I think that was, we just were alike. As odd as that may sound, my dad would always say, you need to be up here on the stage with me. And I would always say, Pop, you told me how horrifying of a career choice comedy is. You encouraged me to become a healthcare provider, and now you want me to go around. And he would also always say there's a profound difference between being a comedian and being a humorist. And so, you mentioned my sister, Ayanna. I'm sure she won't mind me telling this story. When I was, 19 at Morgan State, me and my buddies fancied ourselves for about all of, 30 seconds of being gangster rappers. And we recorded what I like to believe was a mean gangster rap tape. There was no album, tape. We're all passing the little mic around.
Right.
I definitively like to believe I had bars. And so somehow I lost that tape and it wound up in Ayanna's possession. And she called me sounding like a mother, just so utterly disappointed. And and she laid into me like I was her own child. And I laugh about it. I mean, I laughed then too, because I was like, okay, at least it fell into her hands. Now it might be a hit. I don't know. But the loving and lovable, if any of us strayed away from that, we would all kind of be bellwethers to each other to say, we received more, so more is expected from us. And sure, rap, but why would you be doing gangster rap, especially when you are the furthest thing from a gangster? And so, it's just, boyhood ambition, right. Growing up. As I said, it lasted all of 30 seconds. But to really answer your question, me and my dad just hit it off. We realized that there was a lot, and I explain it to people as, I had a multi-personality relationship with my dad. So it was father and son. Then it was Richard, Christian and Richard. And then it was Christian and Dick Gregory. And I could manage those, and my dad could too. When it was Showtime, we had a different relationship than when he was just kicking it in the office.
Right.
And we could, my dad would come, we would just sit on the sofa for hours watching old movies and coming. My wife, Melissa, and I, who at the time, she's retired now, was a news producer with CNN. We were all obsessed with news. So we would just sit, and Dick Gregory, just the friend, more than the dad, just the friend, not when he has to entertain, but can really just put his feet up. He can get uber comfortable. Like I said, like many of the pictures you see where he's just kind of folded into a chair, he can get uber comfortable. And when he gets uber comfortable and relaxed, there's times he'll doze off and wake up, deliver one just hilarious one-liner and go right back to sleep. Funny, just like a live electrical wire just ran through the man's body. And, my wife and I, we just loved it. We couldn't get enough of it. And so, to go to lunch with my dad, because conversation was really the number one form of substance with him. Lunch was like a 4-hour ordeal. I'm like, holy smokes, I'm through everything, Pop. You haven't even touched your salad. And so it was and things at the time that sometimes, the pace of life, you want to push and say, well, let's do it. I learned long ago to slow down, realize that aging is aging. We're all going to be there someday. And you want to surround yourself. When it became with people who love you, who are going to do the best for you, like they did. Parents didn't have a rule book for how to take care of kids. We don't have a rule book for how to take care of our parents. Some people put their parents in a home. Some people, that's unfathomable. Some parents prefer to be in a home. So there's not one size fits all. It's unique to each parent and child and what their relationship are. Not all children are good caregivers or good care providers.
Sure.
It's not in everyone's personality, and you may be a great caregiver for one person and a horrible caregiver for another person. My dad realized there was nothing he could say that I would find offensive because I knew the love the man had. So even if it was something that came out wrong, it didn't even get a raised eyebrow for me and a lot of what he said was for response. And once he realized that I can't stir any anger in Christian because he's given me just a universal pass, and not out of some like blind ambition, but out of like very 2020 understanding of who the man was and what he represented in all of the sacrifice. Sometimes I would just be awe-inspired, not at the celebrity of holy smokes, this man has changed the Gregory DNA in his lifetime. He literally has changed. If you read his autobiography and he talks about his mother wishing that, I just hope one of my children can make it off of North Taylor Street. Mm-hmm. Whoa, we are a galaxy away from North Taylor Street. And so, and what that goes on with the grandchildren and everyone lives, we're all 10 of us, Gregory children, are profoundly different, but we all are rooted in service, activism, and love in our own different separate ways. And that's no one says as you grow old, mammals have to be best friends. You have to love each other. You have to love and respect each other. Sure, you bump heads. When my dad did his Nike commercial, there was a demographic in the family that was strongly opposed to it. There were some that were pro. And I just, at that point, I was a lifelong Adidas man. I was like, I had natural slim feet. Adidas always fit better. I never gave it any thought. And so what I said to my dad, I said, look, Pop, like all these silhouettes here you represent a lot of things. And so if you want to take a stand and do this and kind of introduce yourself to a younger global audience, and what the conversations with Nike were very clear. It was all Black writers and producers on this Kevin Durant commercial, and their thought, and what I said to you earlier, Chris, about the importance of the people on the team loving you and respecting you. Mark Thomashaw, the gentleman who pulled this together, who was the global business executive at Nike at the time. Mark and I are still great friends. We talk weekly. That week together on this shoot impacted and changed all of our lives. My dad decided that, okay, once he read the script and saw how much love there was there, he had initially said no. When the word got back to the marketing agency and the two brothers who had wrote the script, one of them literally cried. I know this because they met with us and had dinner with us when my dad decided to do it. He said, I cried because I wrote this script for you, Dick. I wrote this just from my reverence and love and admiration for you. I wrote this for you. And when I heard no, I was so incredibly heartbroken. And to be sitting with you here now on the set, and the dilemma that the dilemma that Nike had is they represented, arguably the baddest, Kevin Durant and LeBron James. And they said, okay, we need someone who can tell the difference between what's the benefits of being the best and what's the benefit of being the baddest. And so who better to do that than Dick Gregory? So he was like the bellwether, the old wise owl, the tree of knowledge to say who wants to be the best when you can be the baddest. And it was it was black grandma's cooking. It was roller skating. I mean, it was so sure it was a white company. My dad insisted on not being paid. So there's a picture of him receiving a $1 check from Nike. These are Dick Gregory things. These aren't things I encourage other people. These are things so he could sleep more comfortable at night. So, but it was done. And it ran, Nike runs their commercials once and then they go online in perpetuity. So it ran during the World Cup globally. Oh man, people from Harare, Zimbabwe, Johannesburg, Ghana, Europe, people from all over the world started calling and emailing like, was that just your dad? Was that just it did what we wanted to do because we imagined. It was a great commercial. It really, really was. I look at it frequently still. And I've been a Nike man since then because I was like, you show love to the family shows love back. At least I do. My dad did. And so the thought was there would be a grandchild watching that commercial and see their grandparent that never gets excited about nothing light up like a Christmas tree seeing Dick Gregory and then say, hey, why are you so happy to see? Who's that man? And to have a dinner time conversation about Dick Gregory. And so now there's critics who will say, hey, well, that's the wrong approach. It's what the man wanted to do. And I was a firm believer of, as folks get older, you let them, as long as they're insulated and buffered. I mean, I hated that my dad still drove because it was like bumper cars. Every day I was getting a call. And I said, I tore up so many of his cars. So I was like, I really can't say nothing. I just need to be, I said, Pop, you keep hitting stuff. We're gonna have to put you in a helmet and a mouthpiece before we let you get behind the wheel. And so he would always say that, he had such a nice car, I can't say it as colorful as he said it, but it had so many airbags. If they did ever come out, they'd feel like, breasts coming out at him. So everything was rooted in just, comedy, but it was very serious at the same time. And now that I have the comfort of knowing that there was no tragedy at the end of his life cycle, it was as smooth as anyone could have hoped, almost example inspiring. I can look back over all of those little moments and say, yeah, I definitely got what I deserved. I mean, we tore, my brother Gregory and we tore my dad's brand new Rolls Royce like apart, I'm ashamed to say. I mean, we go cruising. We were both freakishly big for our size. And so we would push the car halfway up the driveway before we'd started. And so no one would hear us up and leave. And we'd be cruising all night through downtown Plymouth in a brand new Silver Shadow Rolls Royce, like all of 15 years old. We looked older because we had mustaches. You couldn't tell us nothing. Then my mom would wonder why we were exhausted in the morning and couldn't go to school. We were like Uber drivers before Uber existed, picking folks up, bringing them from one party to the other. No, the Gregory family children's stories pale in comparison to our dad because they're so silver spoon that it's almost despicable to even talk about it without reminding people that the activism was real. The knucklehead stuff of being kids was real, but the activism was real too.
Fun fact for you, there is a neo-soul artist named Christian Gregory. He came out in 2014 and has just disappeared. I don't know if you sent him a cease and desist on the name.
No, I'm a firm believer that all publicity is good publicity. So I'd imagine folks looking for Christian Gregory Neo Soul would find Christian Gregory Heart and Soul. So it's all love. People, my name.
Good music, by the way.
Oh, really so I'm gonna have to look them up. I'm gonna have to.
Guys got 4 songs and they're all great.
Maybe I can get on there and spit some lyrics over some of his neo soul,
some gangster lyrics,
my gangster rap days, and we can come out with something hot.
Let's talk about this documentary a little bit. The one and only Dick Gregory. How did the idea get started? How did Andre Gaines get selected or involved in writing and directing this and producing it? And what advantages does Andre bring for the people here that are interested in filmmaking?
I want to take the last question and move back to the first. The true advantage of Andre Gaines is youth, the network around him, and just being all digital. I'm 51, grew up in an analog world. I have a digital mind. Most of what I do is digital, but there's still that delay as it gets translated in my brain. The beauty of folks who are digital, and a lot of what you'll see in this documentary, is just some breathtaking technical elements. I mean, some of the colorization at the beginning is just brilliant. Right now, me and my dad never cared much about reviews now. So now that I'm happy that they're good, it seems like I should be a little shameful. But the Rotten Tomatoes at 100%, which I always say, I never look at Rotten. Well, I'm looking at it now. The Rotten Tomatoes at 100%. And Dick Gregory was always a man of the people. The reason I'm so excited about Sunday's premiere is to hear what the people, most of the folks Dick Gregory loved and vibed with don't go to film festivals, aren't streaming from the film festival platforms. They're not paying $1,000 to go see all the movies. They're like, no. I want to see that movie. I don't want to see everything you're showcasing. I want to see that movie. And so what Andre Gaines and what I'm so excited for people to see, it just brilliantly stitches together the old, the new, some of the, I'm a former high school math teacher. So I know, my principal at the time always said, you can't always just write good things. There needs to be some, purposeful, constructive criticism. And I know most reviewers feel that as well, which is true. Like on a story so complicated, you can't get everything right. So most of the things that I've seen review-wise that were not positive, which it's very little. It's you didn't expound on this. Well, 110 minutes. Really, it should have been a docu-series. But, the financing of how these things come together. And it's not a one and done. There will be more. But probably, as Andre always explains, 4 or 5 movies, are on the virtual editing bay floor. I mean, there's a lot more there. So what Andre, similar to what I've mentioned about Barack Obama being post-racial, Andre didn't have the baggage that some of the people who grew up on Dick Gregory had. I remember when Dick said this. I remember when Dick was crazy when he used to tell us this. Well, Andre went into this similar to Lena Waithe, discovering Dick Gregory, because that's what most people do. They discover the man during the State of the Black Union addresses that Tavis Smiley used to have. Just immediately looking at all of the other luminaries that were there and how they just respected Dick Gregory, the man, the energy, the force of nature. And Andre was at the time working on a Black survival guide. It was a film that was going to, it was 2015, racial strife was going to teach folks, Black folks how to survive, almost like a Greenbook, which I want to touch on that movie in a moment. Since we're going to talk movies, I want to chop movies up with you for a moment. Almost like a Greenbook type of a film, but he met Dick Gregory, he interviewed Dick Gregory, and as so many times is the case, it suddenly became a Dick Gregory project. And I said, hey, whoa, we need to go back and revisit this contract, young man. This contract says you want to interview, and I was very strict with that. If your film was going to be 10% or less Dick Gregory, And, he's a subject. He's making a contribution to your film. People say, "Oh, we want Dick to make a contribution," and 50% of the film is his. No, that's a Dick Gregory film. And so we would always be very careful. And so we went back. We restructured the language of the deal, and I Am Dick Gregory was born. And what people do back then, as you know, they start Kickstarters. And so he started. Oh, when Dick Gregory found out someone was raising money in his name, because he didn't understand the concept of what a Kickstarter. And I don't try to look. I got enough on my plate. That's not my job, Mr. Andre Gaines, to explain to your subject why you're raising money in his name. Right. And so, come on, Andre would say, "Christian, you know how this works?" I said, "Look, you got to choose your battles wisely. That's on you, young man." So my dad laid into him pretty significantly. Yeah, out here raising money in my name. And I knew it was like people were getting T-shirts, like, merch. I knew it wasn't like, hey, I'm raising $1 million to buy a home in Dick Gregory's name.
Yeah, there's some cool Dick Gregory 68 T-shirts I've seen out there.
I saw those recently too. Yeah. My position on Dick Gregory merch, if it's someone, mom and pop, and there's a gentleman we've given permission that makes a lot of Dick Gregory shirts that sells them online. It's a South African brother. I'm not guarding this lot. Like, I want the knowledge. If Adidas or Nike wants to do a Dick Gregory shirt, that's different. But the young folks out here being young entrepreneurs, my dad always wanted, first it used to be 100,000 millionaires and it became 1 million millionaires that he wanted to inspire. Armstrong Williams made his first $1 million selling Dick Gregory's Bahamian Diet, which is now Dick Gregory's Caribbean Shake. But Armstrong Williams, before he became, the media mogul and real estate mogul, it was selling Dick Gregory's Bahamian Diet as a multi-level, distributor. So Dick Gregory was always about Black media, doing the right thing, owning our own story, telling our own story. And now more than ever, we're seeing that. But laser focus back to Andre for just a moment. So Andre brings a technical skill set that just makes this film pop. Yes, it's long. How could it not be? But it really makes it pop. You can watch this film with the sound off and it would be amazing. You can close your eyes and just listen to it. A brother, Kyle Townsend, apologize if I mispronounced his last name, who did the score. I've been seeing rave reviews just on the work that he did, and rightfully so. It was all young Black and brown folks who loved the man, and you can tell this wasn't a job for them. It was passion. And that's really the beauty of what Andre Gaines brought to the brings, because it's not over, because we're not done. There's more work that the Gregory Estate's doing with the Gaines team, with Lena Waithe, Kevin Hart, and Andre Gaines. There's more projects. I've seen people, there's a big landscape out there now for Black folks producing and directing films. Sure, getting finances is profound, something we still need to address, but the ability and the technical know-how is there. And Andre really put an all-star team together that everyone mentioned, not just the executive producers, but producers and technical crew as well. Everyone had a tremendous love and appreciation for Dick Gregory. And if you really know the story, honestly, how could you not? This man's blood, sweat, and tears is on disabled Americans, white women have benefited more from Dick Gregory's labor than anyone else. And so anyone, my dad would always say, and let me see how I can say this politically correct, back in his day, if you were a stewardess, because you were a stewardess, then there were no flight attendants, you were a stewardess, you had to be, white, beautiful, something out of a centerfold of a magazine. And he said, so when you get on those planes now and you see that ugly white woman bent over with a club foot, you can thank us for that. So he was always very clear that his activism helped. And again, it was a joke. No offense to old, ugly, white, bent over, or clubfoot. This was a joke about bringing a point home that the activism of the civil rights movement helped the whole spectrum of humanity is better as a result of the sacrifice of that generation.
How did Kevin Hart and Lena Waithe get involved? How did they come on as EPs?
They asked. They heard the film, and so they were not sought out. They heard they heard about the film. They reached out. There were no pre-existing relationships. My dad had a pre-existing relationship with Kevin Hart. My dad and Kevin Hart were friends, but my dad's friend. People always hear Dick Gregory said he didn't hang out with celebrities. He still knew these people, not hanging out, wasn't going to Oscar parties. My dad knew Hugh Hefner. He never went to the Playboy Mansion to party. He went there to pick up his checks and to sign deals, but never went there to party. So people sometimes, they take things so literal. Oh, I saw Dick Gregory with Eddie Murphy. I thought he didn't hang out with. Well, these people that he's role models to, when Eddie Murphy received his Mark Twain Prize from the Kennedy Center, they had a private dinner the night before where my dad spoke, and Eddie was, late. I'm sure there's a lot of things going on, and they were very, these are deep pocket folks that put this on. They were very, white folks, very eager to, get everyone to behave and quickly get Eddie up to the stage, and Eddie just hard, like, full stop. I'm not going nowhere till I go over there and hug Dick Gregory and talk to him. 20 minutes. They took their time. Much to the chagrin. There was a lot of red faces in that room. So, time is money. And these two said, we don't care about your time. This is the few times we can, what did Aunt Maxine say, reclaiming her time? This was one of the few times they could reclaim their time and say, you are on our schedule now. And I'll never forget, Eddie Murphy said, Dick, I'm performing tomorrow, and I haven't done comedy in however many decades or years it was. He said, for the last 6 weeks, I've been watching nothing but your YouTube clips to prepare me from getting back up on the stage. And, we were just not surprised, but it definitely was heartwarming. The other part was important to folks like yourself and to Ron Brown, as you mentioned, and, Mike over at Real Black. You don't know the impact of these platforms. I'm certain that Ron and Mike over at Real Black had no idea that Eddie Murphy is sitting up in his mansion taking notes from their platform as he's performing to step back out onto the world's biggest stage, technically for comedy, which is the Mark Twain Prize. So I encourage folks to keep it up, keep doing it. Kevin Hart and Lena Waithe sought Andre Gaines out, saying, we have a tremendous amount of love for this man. We must, not because we want to, but they felt like they could elevate and bring something to the table. And we're grateful because they both definitively did.
Yeah, I love both of them. And was it always Showtime? Did you know, like, or did you shop this to a bunch of different places? How did it land at Showtime?
It was shopped at multiple places, and I think the timing of it, because it fits so nicely into everything going on in the world, but the timing of it, you would have thought it would have been a bigger demand, but I think people were still a little kind of, and people, I mean executives, oh, I don't know, Dick Gregory, some of this, and, as you'll see when you see the documentary, it's Dick Gregory in his full spectrum of life. And so there's no like editing out language. And so Showtime had looked at it, TV One, BET, they all had expressed interest. And for me, I just, Netflix, I really, knowing so much of my dad's demographic is older folks. And here I am as film producer going to talk bad about Netflix, but things get lost there. Things go there. It's an ocean of content. And
it's a red ocean.
Which is great. I spend a ton of time on the platform because, again, being digital minded, laser focus of what I want to see. But Dick Gregory's baked in audience is going to find this wherever it's at. For those folks who might just be late at night flipping through the TV, it was important for me to have this be somewhere where it was scheduled. Something that it's just, hey, it's playing on airplanes, it's playing, and people just stumble onto it. The the key art's so beautiful and engaging. The technical elements are so beautiful that someone would just say, whoa, what is this? And say, this is a must watch. And wow, I learned so much. Hey, mom and dad, have you ever heard of that? Oh, we heard of them when we were, just to start conversations without only getting his niche. And his niche audience is massive, but to be more far reaching. So for me, I was always interested with it being with a premium cable channel, cable because we didn't want to restrict the language, but with a premium cable that would also, they all stream now, so you get the best of both worlds. So Showtime, really, the real catalyst for Showtime was Lena Waithe and Lena Waithe's relationship. I mean,
with her doing the Shy and
exactly. I mean, Lena Waithe is just a sledgehammer. I mean, it's a
love from Master of None as well.
Oh yes, absolutely. And I don't watch much of I'm a news guy like my dad, so I'm on my phone reading news platforms 24/7. The Lena Waithe, just not since Crooklyn have I seen such beautiful depictions of Blackness and Black families. I mean, sure, it's ugly subject matter, but that's part of history. And I know I made a decision some time ago. I wasn't going to see any more slave films unless someone was really bringing something new to the narrative. My dad and I took a lot of heat because we really loved Django Unchained. And part of the reason was
Django was great.
They rewrote history. What slave film have you ever left feeling good? It doesn't matter if you won the battle. It matters how history remembers it. And I understood after watching Django, this is why great white societies have always rewritten history, because what really happened, doesn't matter. Well, it matters then. It doesn't matter 100, 200, 500 years from now. And so my dad and I saw Django multiple times in DC, in the theater, mixed audience. Every time we saw it, people stood up at the end and clapped. Like, when have you ever experienced that in a slave film? Eddie Murphy, in one of his jokes back in the day, was like, he wished he would have been a slave. Massa would have came up to him, told him, go bale that cotton. He would have grabbed his Johnson and jumped in his Lincoln Continental and sped off. But to see that, the embodiment of that in a film, and say, whoa, this is a beautiful thing to say. And there was some brothers. And when I say this isn't to belittle the folk. We can't even fathom what that. But there were some folks that that pushed back. There were some folks that said their stories got written right out of history. But there were some folks that pushed back, just like now. So I think it's important that people who love you tell your story. Lena does a beautiful job of really highlighting the beauty of Black families. And if the only reason I watched them, because I don't watch, I think life is horrifying enough, so I don't watch horror films, because most of them aren't scary. They're shocking, and there's enough shock and awe in life. It's like a car accident. Yeah. But I watched that because I saw all of the beating she was taking. Oh, black pain, Black trauma porn, and platforms are big enough for us to say, okay, if you don't like what someone's doing, do your own. We can do. She's definitively earned the status and the weight and influence, which is massive. Spending as much time in Hollywood now as I do, it's massive. I mean, her presence is really everywhere, and she's talented and she's a worker. That's the one thing. Kevin Hart and Lena Waithe, very different, but the one thing that is synonymous with both of them is just hard work. These folks are workers. And, I learned long time ago, you can be as intelligent as you want. If your work ethic is not off the chart, you'll be a flash in the pan. And so it's a great team. It's a dynamic team. As I said, it's a super Black team, super Black in attitude and mindset. And there's really some great things to come from this team.
Yeah, it's super exciting. I'm going to ask you a couple of sort of Christian-centric questions, starting with, what are the two best pieces of advice you've received so far in your career, in your life, and who did they come from?
Okay, the best advice that I've received is from some of the social media comments telling me to slow down, because there's so much in here, and my patients would complain of this at times. And I would just be like, I used to see 45 patients a day. And I had a great team around me, but I'd go in, they'd be like, oh, my back's gonna be like, do this, call me, come back, boom, boom, out the room. Like, wait a minute. And then I'd say, wait a minute, I don't think they got that. Then I'd have to go back, because I get things that quickly. My brain, because of my dad, it's just like, 100 miles a minute, like, get it, got it, I'm clear. If I'm not clear, I'll circle back for some refinement. So I learned that, the good advice is everyone's brain doesn't work that way. And I knew that because my dad would always say it so my Black grandma can understand it. So to slow down and to, really, dig in and build the foundation and explain. And that's what storytelling is all about. And the second, significant piece, and then these are supplemental things of all the things my dad just instilled and were foundational for me, was from Tash Mosley, Hollywood manager. Tash, real good guy. He managed my dad for my dad's film work. A lot of people didn't realize my dad he still did a significant amount of film and television work. In the film, you'll hear Rob Schneider say, "Oh, well, I didn't know when I asked Dick Gregory to do The Hot Chick." And my dad later told him, "Hey, I'm really happy I did that film because as a result of it, I got health insurance. And my wife, Lillian, she fell down and broke her arm and the health insurance covered all of it." That's not fully accurate. What is accurate and profoundly important is health insurance for older Americans, especially a cancer survivor, is just, insanely expensive and cost productive for anybody, especially for someone who wasn't like a medical oriented person. Naturally, anyone over the age of 65 has Medicare, which they've earned that. That's Medicare. Even if you have insurance, if you're retired, your Medicare becomes your primary. By my dad doing that film, which was that he didn't know this at the time. He just did it because him and Rob were friends. Yeah. And his lines were so easy. For Dick Gregory, it was, "I don't do lines. You have to allow me to, impromptu. Otherwise, I to improvise. Otherwise, I won't do it." He didn't study lines. His brain moved similar to mine, moved too fast for lines. But he was able to get whatever the minimum credit is to do to get your SAG, your Screen Actors Guild insurance reactivated, that it activated. And the SAG, still, which would have been supplemental to Medicare, was just such an incredible insurance plan that things that normally there would have been significant things that Medicare didn't cover or co-insurances, or just certain facilities that just wouldn't take you, was such a huge umbrella policy that my dad, he didn't know it. He just heard my mom and sister, "Oh, everything's covered." So he said, "Oh, really? I'm going to report that back to Rob." And the beauty of Rob, when he heard that, so here's Rob Schneider, this outspoken, white filmmaker, slapstick comedy, right, silly films. Rob was almost a little embarrassed to ask my dad to do Hot Chick. I think he was shocked when my dad said yes. And so here Rob said, "Oh, you know what? I'm going to come in because we haven't finished the movie yet. The next calendar year had started. I'm going to film another segment with Dick that we're not even going to use, pay him whatever that minimum is for SAG," because I told him how happy the family was, I was, that my dad had this much larger now insurance policy, umbrella policy. And just the beauty of Rob, he brought him in, filmed something that he knew he wasn't going to use just to, again, qualify so he didn't get 1 year of that umbrella policy, but 2. And right. So Tash Mosley was my dad's manager. And so here's some fun film facts. So and I'm gonna need your help with some of this, but in Black Panther, the role of the elder that was played by, I know the brother well, New York brother, been in films forever, Forrest Whitaker. That role was supposed to be played by Dick Gregory. It was offered to Dick Gregory first. And so Dick Gregory would have been in Black Panther, and then it would have been Super Black Panther. Dick Gregory would have been in Black Panther, Boardwalk Empire, Mark Wahlberg series. They had wrote him in to be a regular on it. It was just too line heavy. It was too scripted for my dad. He's an unscripted cat. Helen Mirren and Donald Sutherland, the last film my dad did do, Leisure Seeker. Oh boy. I mean, they were all old friends. I mean, when my dad, so if you haven't seen the clip of my dad in Leisure Seeker, and no script, they just wanted him, it was explained to him, it was an Italian film production. and they just said, we want Dick in a wheelchair just to cuss two old white people out. He said, sign me up. So that could happen in an airport anywhere in America any day. Just follow him. That will happen. And so it's a great part where, he's in the hospital in the senior center with Alzheimer's, and the woman comes in because Helen Mirren is saying that Dick was her first boyfriend when she moved to the country and moved to America. And Donald Sutherland is hell-bent. He has a shotgun under his jacket, hell-bent to meet her first boyfriend, and is just shocked beyond belief when he realizes it's a black guy. And the black guy answers his shock beyond belief by letting him have it. And it's just a short little cameo, but they cut up on the set for probably 5 days before they could even get to shoot. And just, speaking of their anti-Vietnam platform, all of the sacrifice, like a lot of people don't realize, there were a lot of good white folks that were part of the civil rights movement. And, they didn't all go all in like Dick Gregory did, but, there was the civil rights, went to human rights, women's rights, all of these campaigns that came after. And, blood, sweat, and tears is where we find DNA. And by that measure, Dick Gregory's DNA is on all of these movements that are rooted in fairness, justice, and equality. Dick Gregory played a role and was there in some meaningful way. Andre frequently says, Dick Gregory's like the black smart Forrest Gump. And it's like, yeah, he was there. I mean, he was there, boots on the ground, in your face, finger waving, with style, charisma, and, pizzazz.
Well, I always wondered if they took, the whole scene where Forrest Gump runs across the country. I always wonder if they took inspiration of that scene from Dick, because Dick did that first.
It's befitting. I mean, as you know, my dad ran from Los Angeles to New York City, running 50 miles a day. He had an AM marathon with rest midday, PM marathon. You hear folks complain for weeks, if not months on end, after running one marathon.
Oh, yeah.
For 40 plus days, just 2 marathons a day. I mean, his feet were like dog meat. He had, Dick, teeth were bad, feet were bad, joints were bad, multiple hernias from just all the jobs he had working, on the flood line when he lied about his age, working during the World War at munition plants and lifting heavy munitions, and again, lying about his age. All of this is in his autobiography. He was, a lot of sacrifice. People saw the polished, beautiful suit, MLK cap, but they didn't realize there was a time, pre 9/11 when, the airport experience was a little different. My dad had 4 hernia belts that he had to buckle into, almost like a child that needs braces to walk, just to hold all his hernias in from the damage he had to his abdominal wall as a child. And I would be like, man, they all look like bear traps. I mean, he's just snapping it. So to watch him go through security and have to take all of that off and only put it all back on. No, it's like watching RoboCop. I mean, This is the folks that knew Dick Gregory well knew the beating that his body took, and not just the one he took from Bill Connor, but the beating that his body took. And most of that beating was, at his own doing. I mean, it was like he hazed himself as much as he hazed other folks. He certainly hazed Andre Gaines to earn the right to make this film. Andre can expound on that at length.
Yeah, I love it. And so Dick's obviously a mentor. You've become a mentor. For this young film community that's watching this, what is the best way to find a mentor, if you had to pin it down?
Let me say this, and I want to answer that, because I mentioned Tash Mosley, but I didn't mention what Tash advised me.
Oh, yes.
Tash, and that was my mistake. Tash was another one that said, slow down, understand your equity, understand what you bring to the table, and don't, a lot of times we think of equity just amongst financial, but sweat equity is huge. Understand what you bring to the table and make sure you're being compensated and appreciated for that. Because now that, I'm attached to this project as an executive producer, I'm attached to the scripted as a producer. There's 10 other film projects I'm involved with right now that don't have anything to do with Dick Gregory's orbit other than being rooted in love and lovable. There's a Momentum film project that I'm involved with that's about a present day SEAL Team 6 team that gets caught in a time warp and winds up back in Memphis in 1968, 3 days before King's assassination. It's just brilliant. I mean, It's just absolutely brilliant. Everyone we shared the Bible with just called immediately, how can we be part of it? My dad and I, our media company, Dick Gregory Media, which has now evolved to Tower Hill Entertainment, it was always rooted in fairness and equality, in telling stories about us with love. And what I would say to any young or old person getting into film, and nowadays with smartphones, we're all producers. We're all gathering content, and all that content's worth something. And so, like the young sister who tragically but gratefully videotaped the entire 9+ minutes of George Floyd. Yeah, she's a film producer. I mean, that content on her phone is her intellectual property. When we die, most people in their wills, and I learned this from my dad, his will definitively carved out tangible, physical property. There was some holes in his will for intellectual property. And, I was an advisor for Miss Cicely Tyson. I talked to Cicely's daughter, who's the executive of her estate, regularly. The same attorney drafted Miss Tyson's will that drafted my dad's will. And these folks, they liked attorneys they were friends with. And so they weren't folks that specialized in intellectual property. So I would tell everybody now, understand that every keystroke you put into your phone is your intellectual property. Every little short text, every little short story, 100 years from now could be the basis for a mini series, the basis for a film. You never know how far-reaching something you do or say or type or take a picture of or a video of do today will be tomorrow. So arm yourself with that knowledge. The best example of that is Bradley Cooper. Ellen DeGeneres was one of these shows that she was the host for, one of the big award shows. She was sponsored by one of the phone manufacturers. And so she had the phone, was like, let's take a selfie. So it was like a who's who of A-list celebrities. Right. Her arm wasn't long enough to capture it. So Bradley Cooper, at her request, took her phone and snapped the picture. He owns the picture. It's his intellectual property. Regardless that it's on her phone, he's the artist that adjusted it, got the lighting, got the angle right. What's on your phone is your property. And as we move into this virtual realm of the blockchain, and two of my companies are crypto collectible, not in cryptocurrency space, because I don't trust people, but I am in the crypto collectible space. I do think that cryptocurrency will be, but a lot of Hill Harper and a lot of other folks that are deep in that space, hey, you're not. It's not that I'm not embracing of it. It's just same reason I'm not. I don't invest on Wall Street. Anything that can be manipulated. And crypto collectibles, like the whole NFT things that most people don't even understand, are definitively being manipulated right now. And so it'll go through, and again, folks are going to hate me for this, it'll go through a Ponzi scheme-like cycle, but then like that pendulum swinging, it will level. The blockchain is a much better platform than the World Wide Web for things to be housed and located and insulated to protect our intellectual property. And now one of the companies I'm working with is looking to attach, a non-fungible token to physical property. So almost like a deed to a home. Hey, that's your phone. Those are your pictures on your phone. They'll each be deeded with their own non-fungible token. But I don't want to go. I want to get back to what we're.
Well, no, I agree with that, and we've talked about NFT a lot because I think So we have a scene in one of our films that's an NFT that got made into an NFT. And just to test it out, and you're right, the whole NFT market is being propped up right now by about 10 or 11 very deep-pocketed people.
That have a vested interest in it doing well. So, which is the sole example of a Ponzi scheme or a pyramid. We're pumping it up. But I don't say that to be negative. It's
going to work out, but they have to pump it up in the short term. So I think you're dead on about that. We have an interview coming up with a IP, intellectual property lawyer named Kevin Christopher, that I'm excited it's going to come out. It's going to talk exactly about what you're saying. Like, this is all your intellectual property.
profoundly important.
And people lose that property because they don't know their rights.
Mm-hmm. And they put everything else in their will, but they don't have a control measure. And too much of it we give it these social media platforms. The release we sign to put our content on it, we're giving it away. And so I'm not saying, it's a double-edged sword. You got to put it on there to get the content out because we don't have our own platforms. Donald Trump showed how difficult it is to build your own platform. I'm going to go build my own platform. Profoundly difficult. So we need to use the infrastructure that's in place, but we also moving forward need to find a way for us to be able to monetize, what's ours. I mean, brick and mortar property is not more important than than intellectual property. I have another gentleman I want to introduce you to that I'm certain he'd be very eager to come on your program. Jeff Price. Mm-hmm. Jeff runs a company called Word Collections, and it's solely the focus is going and getting the copyright violations specifically as it speaks to comedy and spoken word. So if you do, my dad did 12 studio albums. Sometimes the album, the copyright might be in the studio's name, might be in the whoever did the cover art on the album would be copyrighted and protected. But the spoken word, the intellectual words, are always owned by who is saying them. So the live performance aspect. So there's 3 copyrights on spoken word and comedy. And most of these comedians just simply, all of these digital platforms, YouTube, XM satellite radio that are playing all of this content, they have accounts where they're putting these black and white comedian and spoken words money aside because they know someday they're going to come asking and say, oh, yeah, we knew we had to pay you. You just never asked. And so that's when there's going to be no penalty for it. So and a lot of the things that shifted, hip hop's the largest music genre in the world. And there's just a lot of deceptive practices that have been set for producers, and black producers in the hip hop genre are really not getting money that's out there earmarked for them. And some of the thing is, when you have a ton of money, you say, I don't care what I have. If it's mine, it's mine. Why should I let this corporation have it? And Jeff Price, this is his 3rd company in dealing with. His first was going after the radio stations. Then it was going after the labels, and now it's going after spoken word and comedians. And so, you have to write, it's everywhere. So you can't check. You need algorithms to scrub and find and say, hey, by the way, Sound Exchange and all of that. By the way, you owe me money for what came out of my mind. And so with the blockchain now, what 5G allows technology to do. And I know at first it was a lot of boogeyman, but when the microwave first came out, we didn't have any of that in our home, but I'd go to my, neighbors and friends and family, and the grandmas would say, okay, everyone get out of the room. I'm getting ready to turn on the microwave. So everyone had to clear out of the room. And, and now, mom or dad today, they got their forehead against it as they're texting, as they're heating up their soup. So the 5G, really the boogeyman aspect of it, the truth of it, when it's fully there, because it's not there, it's not optimized yet, will allow virtual reality and reality to sync up. And now you're talking the Matrix. Now you're talking, young kids on a skateboard talking to someone next to them that's not there, but they're there to them real time. So virtual reality and reality syncing up. And you think analog folks are having a hard time now. I mean, my dad struggled with his smartphone 10 times a day. He'd call me from his landline asking how to turn it back on or how to turn it off. How do I call your mother again? So some of these folks are really going to struggle once that quantum leap in technology. And we're, year, 2 year out from that. And so you must understand it. And you don't have to know how to write code. I would encourage young folks to, but if you're, my age or older, you don't understand what it is, but because soon you won't be able to go anywhere. They all, cabs are gone, payphones are gone. My dad struggled with that. Well, can someone get me an Uber? Can someone get me a Lyft? He didn't know how to do it on his own. So it will help. It will behoove older analog folks to understand this, because life will be much more enjoyable. Hearing's already going bad, vision's going bad. Well, if you don't know how to simply order food or order yourself a car, life's going to be pretty tough. But there's some significant changes, and I'm super happy to hear you're bringing that type of information on this platform.
Yeah, absolutely. But to take it back, you had to mentor your dad on how to use a phone. What about just finding mentors in general? Just to take us back to that, do you have any thoughts about, if you had to pin it down, how do you find a mentor?
I do. As you know, as a Gregory, we pretty much have an opinion on everything.
Yeah.
I would say this. My dad had 10 children, but really I was the only one that wound up doing that for him. So having more kids doesn't insulate you to the fact that, oh, great, I got all these folks who are going to do X, Y, Z. There's folks that have many kids and the kids don't do anything but put them into a home. So find folks who there's love and respect there, mutual love and respect. That's important. But also to realize you don't need to get all of your information from one source. Back in the day, you kind of did, because you didn't have these platforms. So find, 5, 10 or so podcasts that you look at regularly, where you go, like I just mentioned, the information you provide on here, Chris, is profound. There's people that I hear people, especially certain entertainers right now, talking about NFTs. I know if I put a mic in front and said, drill down on what an NFT is. These are just things to them. The concept behind it, it's complicated, and it really takes an ability to have a digital mind from 30,000 feet up to see what that is. And as I explain to folks all the time, we had baseball cards when I was a kid that were assigned value, and NFT is like a virtual version of that. And so it's they say, oh, so really, real money, like real value, real money. Money in the future will not be this tangible, dirty paper transaction that we're doing now. Some of the things we look back on and say, wow, that was really, the dark ages of time. People using physical currency. Right now during COVID, we're like, don't even shake hands, watch it. But yet we're like counting filthy money as we exchange it to each other. Right. So it will change. Embrace technology. I was an early adopter to electric vehicles. I've been a Tesla man almost from day one.
Likewise.
And people say, oh, you just like certain brands. No. The moment someone does it better, I'll jump ship. I'm not vested with any of these companies. I'll jump ship. I go to who does it right. People say, oh, you talk about Apple so much. Well, because it makes my life easier. When I'm exchanging using blue bubbles and can send you a PDF, and then I get someone that's got a green bubble and the PDF keeps bouncing back, and I say, I'm going to have to email it to you. You're slowing my pace down because the technology is not on the same scale and it's not level. Exactly. I went back and forth to the Tribeca Film Festival from DC to New York, only required one stop. Currently I have a Model 3, but I ordered the Cybertruck. I'm a big guy. I'm a lifelong pickup truck guy. And I got the 3 is just a placeholder to the Cybertruck comes out. And so good. We have that in common. We can tailgate together.
Yeah. So I bought a Model S in 2014 or 2015. And at the time, I want to say I was the first 5 people in my city.
Doesn't surprise me.
I'm in Brentwood, Tennessee, to have it. And I remember executives and C-suite people telling me how foolish I was, and oh, you got caught up in the cult of personality of Elon. I said, no. I've been following Elon since PayPal. I bought my Model S in cash.
Okay.
I said, I don't have any debt on it. I was following him for years. I'd saved up money to buy it. Like it wasn't, I didn't get emotional. You have it exactly opposite. Yeah. And I'm like you. Once you see that it works and you have that epiphany, you're like, oh, this is going to be huge. So not only did I buy the car, I just put a bunch of money into the stock. And it was like,
smart.
I'd seen this man execute several times. I was like, oh, this is seems risky on the outside, but once you do the research and you're dug in, it's not as risky.
Look, electric vehicles, you can put 300,000 miles on them. Most people don't realize.
My Model X that I have now, it's a 1,000,000-mile drivetrain.
Yeah, well, it's almost what I explain to people. And this isn't just Tesla. There's other incredible vehicles that are coming. Tesla just has the best infrastructure.
Yes.
I'm a condo guy, so I need to charge while I'm on the move. I don't charge overnight. And what people don't realize is it's like when people first started, I was like, what the hell is a smartphone? What makes it smart? And now we can't live without it. So, I was one of those cats with my Nextel flip, like, I don't need no smartphone. And, still happy that I could flip my phone closed at the end of a call. And, I had people in my orbit that for the longest time, what was with the keyboard that everyone used to?
It's like the T-Mobile or the BlackBerry. There's BlackBerry.
BlackBerry,
Palm.
BlackBerry folks, don't be the BlackBerry folks of automobiles and thinking that there's going to be another comeback for tangible keyboards and all of this. Like the technology is a quantum leap in. Again, I went to New York and back multiple times, but I charge one time for 20 minutes. People think it's 20 minutes. That's enough time for me and the missus go to the bathroom, stretch our legs, grab something out of the cooler because we like to be health eaters. We bring our food when we go places, then get back in the car and zip right up. Most hotels will charge it for you for free overnight. So you just don't realize the savings. And two big things, the big gas pinch that was recently here and everyone couldn't get gas. I was sleeping soundly at night. Like, yeah, I can't relate to that. And the amount of folks down in Houston when they had that freak winter storm that were sleeping in their Teslas and running their laptops and phones and recharging them because they could drive an hour away to recharge and come back. It just, once people make the leap, they'll see. And I don't know if you've ever done this, but we gave away a lot of, now would be a good time to show it. So we got a lot of merch. And I'm going to send, Nick's dad picked up a lot of this, but I'll make sure you get some.
Awesome. And for those in the audience just listening to this, Christian just showed me a tote bag, beautiful tote bag with the key art on it. We have bags, we have cookies. We really just wanted to show our gratitude to all the folks involved. But we put my dad's new Caribbean shake. We put cans of that in there, the new energy drink that is wellnessandnature.com. All of my dad's nutritional products are still available. But I say all that to say the bags were about 15 pounds. We had 90 of them. So in two cars, one coming from Chicago and then me. I mean, my car was loaded to the hilt and it drove the exact same. I mean, I've had pickup trucks with less weight that didn't handle the load that well. So most people just don't understand the benefit and then the life. I'm a lover of life. I won't buy a home if it doesn't have a sprinkler system, like if it doesn't have, solid evacuation plans. I'm always only on certain floors so I can make rapid, ingress, egress. The real driver for me was safety. I mean, for 25 years, I operated as a chiropractor. I saw the ugly downside of automobile injuries. 40,000 Americans a year die from automobile injuries. At least 20 times, I'm certain the technology of these cars saved my life. We all get distracted. We all got beeps and bells going on just a hand's length away. At least 20, 25, 30 times easily, that alert, that brake for you, that swerve for you has saved my life. That alone is worth the price of admission. Yeah, I call it Tesla effect, when people actually get in the car or when they notice the car and see that it's behaving differently. And there's a couple of little hacks like that. One is I figured out how to reduce road rage. Just turn on autopilot in 5 o'clock traffic on the interstate. So what actually makes you mad is that you have to be constantly attentive to the car in front of you and behind you and beside you.
Absolutely.
Once the car can do it, you're just riding along.
You reclaim so much quality of life.
Yes.
It took us 45 minutes to get through the Lincoln Tunnel.
Mm-hmm.
I set the auto, higher speeds, as you know, it alerts you to touch the wheel more often. But when you're crawling along, I think once in the Lincoln Tunnel, it was like, hey, grab the wheel. So, I was able to engage with my wife. We were able to draw out the strategy. Who we need to get on the gift bag list. I got so much work done. You are literally reclaiming your quality of life. And so
it's truly superior. It is.
Tesla, Elon, if you're listening, go ahead and, buy some ads on the program, show that love back. But really for me, it honestly, like people say, well, why'd you get your dad that type of phone or that type of car? It really is about, understanding what's next. And so that's the beauty of what we're doing here, Chris. I mean, long after we're gone, these projects that we're doing, people still watch Gone with the Wind. People are still watching Roots. People are still, long after we're gone. And now, since it's digital, they get chopped up, repackaged, so it just is, us chopping it up here can be divided up into a billion different sound bites and serve different purposes to different folks. And it's really just a blessing.
It is. It's a type of immortality. You mentioned being involved in 10 projects outside of the one and only Dick Gregory or anything Dick Gregory related. Excuse me. What would be maybe some of the biggest creative and business mistakes you're seeing newcomers making so far? Because you're around so many projects and young folks doing this.
Great question. And my answer to that would be thinking they need old folks and old money. There's a lot of gatekeepers in Hollywood that don't want to see you shine. It's like when I became a chiropractor in Washington, D.C., the chiropractic board had a lot of haters on it. They liked the limited number of chiropractors that were in D.C., and they were hell bent to keep it that way. So it had nothing to do with your intellect. I had to wait a year before they even offered the opportunity to take the board exam. And so this is something that most states offer it 4, 5, 6 times a year. So I had to wait a year just to even take it. And then when you did take it, it was laughable just how poorly structured was. And you could see the intent and purpose was for you not to, we want to make sure good chiropractors, we want to make sure no chiropractors get through. And since I think the folks most likely who were involved with it are probably no longer alive now, so I don't feel bad about outing them. It was all white folks. They were they pulled me aside. This test that I had been studying my ass off for, like to the point, 6 months, not going to movies, not going out to eat, not knowing my family, like that level of studying that, most folks, unless they have a post-grad training, you really don't understand like board and bar exams, the level of focus. And so my whole life had stopped. I mean, I wasn't going to the gym. I get out on an occasional jog. And when I got in there, the woman pulled me aside and said, I really love your father. Don't worry, you don't have to take this test. I was pissed. I was like, wait, if I was the wrong type of cat, I would have been like, oh, what a blessing. I was like, are you kidding? And meanwhile, the other 10 people taking it were friends of mine. So how was I supposed to go back and tell them, hey, sorry, y'all didn't make it through. Did you find the test hard? I don't know. She told me I didn't have to take it. I got friends too. What am I supposed to tell people? It immediately made me feel stupid and entitled and gifted. And I just said, oh, no. I said, not a chance. I was like, these people here are my friends. We've been studying together for this. And I just insisted on taking the test. And I know my score was dramatically higher than theirs. And we were all pretty much equally competent. So I think that was skewed. So don't let gatekeepers. I mentioned Greenbook a moment ago.
Yes.
And the Farley brothers. And I forget which of the Farleys, but one of them was here in DC. There was going to be a screening of Greenbook at the Oprah Winfrey Theater inside of the African American History Museum. And prior to it, we all kind of marched as a group from the MLK Memorial. And we got back to the screening and the Farley brother was speaking. And he was like, it's not always about who makes the film. When we wanted to make Greenbook, no one else was out here trying to make the film. And I kind of called BS on that. I said, because you can get films greenlit doesn't mean you're the only one who wanted to do it. there's plenty of Black filmmakers out here that want to get their products out. They can't get financing because the same gatekeepers that financed your film won't finance ours. And so I thought Greenbook was an incredible movie, but it also was incredibly irresponsible because the takeaway, here you have this, this intellectual, this acclaimed doctor who just, has exceeded all of the expectations of life. And then you got this caveman of a white cat that, barely speaks English, bar knuckle brawler. And you walk out of there with him, the hero. You walk out of there feeling like, wow, he was amazing. Thanks for sticking up for us. Shame on your community for holding us down because one of you. I was so conflicted because I can watch something just as a film and say, okay, wow, that was great. That was beautiful element. Smart how you time. It's a road trip film. It was so well done. It was so well executed.
It was. But
also, I can look at it and say, had we done it, it would have been different. And I also think, we all need to be thick-skinned. Art is subjective. What one person loves doesn't mean everyone needs to love it. So for me to critique a film, we're all entitled to that. It's you think it's hot in here, I think it's cold. These are opinions, not facts. So I feel, and I expressed my opinion because that's what I do. And it ruffled some feathers, even with some friends, because it was clear that there was, a relationship with the Farleys, and there was talk of some new projects, and they felt like, here come these Gregorys, speaking their mind. And I said it with love. I definitely said it with love. In the other more recent example of that, just because there's Black folks, we got Black folks on the board. That doesn't mean there's the amount of love or understanding. You need multiple. So if I miss something, just like my dad always had missed that Jack Parr didn't allow Black folks to come and sit on the couch. He got caught up in the glamour and missed that. And when it was pointed out to him, he was horrified. And that's the reason he said, no, we need to work as teams to make sure that we're seeing the totality of the spectrum and not just caught up in the moment. Like I said, I did both with Greenbook. Caught up in the hype and the glamour, great. Then sat back and said, this is what troubles me. And this is what I would do different. And there's nothing wrong with that. Or if you're not making films, say, this is what I'd like to see different. And almost within 30 days of each other, you had both of the Kings. You had Charles King and you had Regina King. Regina King, one night in Miami, I knew most of the subjects in there personally. And naturally didn't know Malcolm. Malcolm was killed before I was born, but Sister Betty Shabazz was like very close to me. We flew to Africa multiple times together. She was a patient of mine. I read a book I went to a super militant, before I became a gangster rapper, I was super militant at Morgan State University and read a book that had some colorful things to say about the death of her husband. I mentioned it to my dad. He said, hold on. Click back on the line, and here's Sister Betty Shabazz on. Tell Betty what you just told me. I was horrified because it was real, wild stuff. And so she giggled and she laughed with love, and she explained to me, oh, we've heard that before. We've looked into it. I'm glad people are still discussing it. It was just, and ever since then, we just became incredibly close. So, Betty Shabazz, Coretta Scott King, Dr. Dorothy Height, Myrlie Evers, Rosa Parks, all these people, most of them were patients of mine, but definitely they were all like moms to me. And, I considered myself the chiropractor to the movement. I kept the movement upright. And the stories you hear from people when they're laying on your hot, aqua therapy bed, intersegmental traction table, it almost is like a trip to the therapist. They start opening up. And in those times in opening up, although I may not have known some of their husbands, who, were, martyrs in a sense, gunned down by a white, vicious, racist system, I knew personal side of them through them. And it was very special to watch One Night in Miami. It was clear the love that was there. So we know Black folks couldn't stay in certain types of hotels back then. They showed that in the movie.
Yep.
So, you know, a white filmmaker or videographer or cinematographer may have focused on just how ran down the room was, you know, rats and roaches. Not Regina King. You didn't even see the room. You just saw these glowing, beautiful human beings, and their spirit is what filled that room. Sometimes we don't need to see what we've already saw for our lifetime. And I said to myself, because I didn't know anything about it, I just knew it was her directorial debut. The Regina King's agent and the estate's agent over at ICM is the same person, Lori Bartlett. And, you know, I immediately wrote a lengthy letter to Lori, asking her to forward it on to Regina, just singing her praise, like, you know, kudos on your directorial debut. Just what a brilliant depiction of what life was for these four very different, bigger than life at such a difficult time in Malcolm's life. The love that Malcolm showed talking to his family on the phone. It just reminded me of my dad. I mean, you know, young folks don't know what a payphone is. You know, Dick Gregory could spend 6 hours on, you know, hang up for one call, pick up another, while I'm sitting in the car with the car idling, waiting for him to finish up, because we didn't have any cell phones then. So seeing that scene was just incredibly special to me. And I saw Judas and the Black Messiah.
Yeah.
I saw that about a month after it came out. And part of my delay was I didn't like the title. I said, well, why are we highlighting Judas instead of it being, you know, Hoover, the white devil in the Black Messiah? Like, why are we in the title? And so sometimes that's just me myopically getting hung up on stuff. But I was like, why would we put, my dad would always say, we're like, you know, oh, black folks, crabs in a barrel, always put, well, don't look at us. Who's putting the heat under the barrel that's making the barrel so uncomfortable? We're just not by nature don't want to see each other get ahead. There's so much discomfort where we're at. That's where the clawing comes from. You put crabs in a barrel with no heat, no discomfort, you're going to see some relaxed crabs in a barrel. You make it uncomfortable in that barrel, it's like a towering inferno. People are clawing on each other, trying to get out. So I didn't like the title because I felt the title, you know, J. Edgar Hoover, who personally called for the termination, the neutralization of my father, I was like, he gave this guy a pass again. I was like, you know, I know there's professionals that come up with titles, but the white devil, you know, the big, enormous white devil in the Black Messiah would have been, and I know that doesn't fit on key art so nicely, but something, trust me, there's enough smart brothers out here that could have insisted, that could have come up with a title that spoke to the moment. So you have this petty thief that, you know, wasn't even, you know, down with Fred Hampton. Like, hey, I'm no activist. Oh, I'm in trouble. So you want me to turn my back on something I don't. Someone would do that any day. I'm not part of this. It's not like Judas was on the inside in turn. This is no Judas. This is someone that the white devil manipulated to go in there and do what he did. So I was reluctant to see it for that.
Yeah.
I love Fred Hampton.
I thought Lakeith was incredible in that.
Say it again.
I thought Lakeith was incredible.
Oh, no question about it. From the moment that movie started, he was the star. I mean, from the moment that movie started, and it did a great job depicting how they manipulated it. I mean, when you have all the, you know, black folks are the milk and honey in America. So when you're in control of all of the milk and honey, when you control black folks and you have all the resources and, you know, to hang all the carrots, it's not hard to start manipulating folks. And so here you have, you know, Fred Hampton, who like 20, you know, 19 when he started his activism. I mean, he's a kid, you know, when we sent folks, when this country sent folks to Vietnam that age, we were like, hey, we're sending kids. Fred Hampton was a kid. And I say that respectfully. You know, he was not Jesse Jackson. Fred Hampton was the first Rainbow Coalition. He reached out to poor white folks. He reached out to our Latino brothers and sisters. He brought together I felt like the movie skipped past that. They touched on it, but I felt like there wasn't a deep enough dive on that. And these are all just, you know, objective opinions. I felt that
got sacrificed for the love story, probably.
It got sacrificed for the love story and the pig hating story. I can like, man, these folks really hate pigs. Like there was so much pig. I saw almost as much shooting from black folks as I did from cops. And I said, wait a minute, it was so lopsided back then because the police were so heavy-handed. And if you just watch that film, you wouldn't have realized how disproportionate the force was and what was being used against and what was being pushed back. And I felt that Fred Hampton's feeding of his people was so incredible. And I felt like, these things were touched on, and these are the things you walk away from a film that really resonate with you. And that's what I do. The human body, when we have an allergic response to something, we have an immediate response and a delayed response. And that's how I deal with films. How do I feel immediately? Then what's my delayed after I've had time to sit and think it over? And my delayed response, and even my immediate, was when the white cops at the end raided, it was so blurred out. I said, no, I want to see their face with the same clarity I saw the brother that shot the cop at the end's face, with his face and blood splatter on it and pig this and pig. I said, we have an opportunity as filmmakers because you lose some people just said, wow, they're not looking, we didn't spend it, there wasn't enough time spent on why there was so much hatred towards pigs and what you assume people knew. And there's a lot of younger people that didn't know about 60s, late 60s, the movement in Chicago. Again, I said 68 was like another civil war. Right. And so when I looked and I read and I saw, and I'm not this person. I mean, my dad's had plenty of white collaborators that he's done book projects with, but I saw, okay, white writer. And then I know there was a brother that came in that directed it, that also got a co-writing credit. But I could tell
Charles King produced it.
Charles King produced, and I'm a huge fan of Charles. And also, I think as filmmakers, we should be comfortable weighing in, because just like my dad missed Jack Parr, when you're too close to stuff, many times you can miss stuff. It wasn't like Charles King was out there, on the set yelling cut. So sometimes you're just so happy to have something done that you need someone from 30,000 feet up to say, hey, I would still encourage everyone to see it, because we can learn from these things and do better. And that's the type of constructive criticism I want on the projects that I'm doing. I want to get better. I want to make, for my lifetime, Black folks have felt bad coming out of most films. So it's about slavery. If I got to see another brother getting whipped or another brother getting hung, like, I know it existed. We all do. And I'm not burying my head in the sand and in denial about it. I'm saying I also know in my travels all over the world, some of the happiest people I've seen were the poorest people. I also know the joy, love, and laughter and humanity that's in our community that doesn't get depicted enough. And if it does, it's snippets of it amongst, there's so many, Seinfeld, all these, what's it about? I'm a huge Larry David fan. Like, that's my type of comedy right there. Like,
me too.
There's Black Larry Davids, like, for certain. There's Black folks who, and so tired of the athlete part, the violence that's there, but there's a whole other side of the African American experience, Blacks across the diaspora, that just simply is not being told, and now we have an opportunity to do so, and an obligation, quite honestly, to do so.
Yeah, and it's great to be around people who have been made to feel comfortable enough around you that they can be your friend and they can be honest with you when you have a shortcoming.
It's a must.
And I always go back and give thanks to a guy named Chris Wente, who was an actor in one of the first films we ever did, which was a short film. And they ran out of we as a team ran out of time in a location. And we were realizing that we didn't get the shot we needed on the film. And he just was so graceful and kind to me. He came over to me and said, as an executive producer, one thing you would have been nice would have been for you to go in and advocate for more time for us and use your unique negotiation ability to go in and get us more time to be aware of it. And I was so close to the project that I missed it. Like you said, you can just miss it. I just missed I was like, oh, I could have done that. I should have done that. And the way he said it was even more graceful than I just said it back to you. And so here I am on the phone, missing out on an opportunity to be better at my job. And I've always taken that with me to try to pay attention to details and pay attention to the creatives in the room that are doing things. Every one of our films have been renamed. You mentioned that. Sometimes I agree with it, but another part of me is like, as an EP, I really should stand up and say, if you want the name of this film to be this, you need to stick by it. Because if it's a streaming deal or a services deal and you didn't sell to a big streamer, then you're not going to get fair market value for your plays anyway. So the rationale for changing your movie to a movie title that starts with an A is dead on arrival anyway. It didn't make a difference. So stick by your artistic chops. So that was a wonderful answer.
And that's important. If people in your corner don't tell you the truth, they're not your friends. They're just along for the ride. You know, my circle of friends has got profoundly smaller, like profoundly. I got lots of folks I like to go and have drinks with, but like my circle of friends, because if I can't lean on you to the same extent you lean on me, we're associates. But friendship's important to me. I mean, friendship is profoundly important to me. My wife Melissa and I've known her since she was 5 and I was 6. We grew up.
That's awesome.
She was my sister Yana's best friend, and the common denominator in the entire span of our relationship is friendship. I mean, we were always friends first. So she's my drinking buddy. She's my laughing buddy. And so when I got something real wild and inappropriate to say, she hears it first. And so similar to me with my dad couldn't offend her either. She would always say, if there was a mic and camera in this car, you would be canceled so quickly. I said, well, if that's what's meant to be, then that's what's meant to be. But, some things got to be said. So no, it's heartwarming to know there's folks like you and Nick and the work you all are doing, Chris. That's just it's going to change and be far-reaching for others. Like the gentleman who said to you, "I wish you had a one." That wasn't for that moment. That was intended for future. Everything in our life happens for a reason. And those universal breadcrumbs, sometimes they're whole loaves of bread and they just hit us over the head and say, whoa, I was asleep at the switch. It's not like we're lazy to sleep at the switch. It's just too many moving parts. And there's the other side of that coin. I wish I had the luxury to be paying that much attention because it's not in my spirit. It wasn't my heart that I missed it. It's the brain, and we're doing too much. And that's why having good friends and a good team of professionals, you got to pay folks. You got to pay folks. You got to have, so many times I'm a one-man band. I'm like, I do my own media. I've never hired someone to do me and my dad's social media. I was like, I'll do it myself. But it comes to a point that during Tribeca, I was so late in posting stuff because I was part of the story. And when you're part of the story, it's difficult. So you have to learn how to, have the right, some people just have 20 people around them, not even doing anything purposeful. That's not what but a mean, lean digital team that really can help maximize these experiences and maximize the work that we're doing is a must.
Is it true that Dick actually spent $1,000 a month in newspapers and research?
He definitively. I got the receipts to prove it. Yeah, not only, if you really look at the math on that, it was more than that because most of it wound up in the trunk of his car. And, whenever he went to the airport, he put all his luggage in the back seat because the trunk was full of newspapers. So people would think there was like a body in there because the weight in the back of the car. And it was just all these news. I said, Pop, you're buying all these newspapers. What do you think? It's going to just from being in the trunk through osmosis, it's going to go read them and get rid. But he said, no. If someone ever says something, I can go right back. I know what stack that week's New York Times is. So in the car, in the house, and one of the true joys, not for others, but for me, is my dad flying. Here's a skinny black man up in first class with a stack this big of newspapers and a highlighter. He could go through newspapers with a surgeon's precision, highlight, cutting, ripping, throwing. The flight attendants would already know. They'd bring him, he was a platinum level flyer on every airline. They'd bring him 2 big trash bags. They already knew Mr. Gregory's going to be gutting these newspapers the whole flight, searching for the cracks in the fiber. But the other thing is, when I'm on Amtrak, I always ride in the quiet car on the train. And they say, oh, is it because the young folks? I say, no. Young folks are texting. It's the senior citizens yelling in the phone to their grandbabies on FaceTime that drives me nuts. And so my dad was a cell phone violator. I mean, he'd have his earpiece in, talking like he was talking to someone in the back of the plane. And for some reason, the story he loved to call to talk about people sitting in the front of the plane, 100 pounds soaking wet, a heavier weight of papers than him in his lap, with his earbud on, talking to God knows who, and just yelling back and forth about 9/11 and the plane crash and doing an inside job. And just to see the people in the plane's face, like, whoa, who is this black cat talking about 9/11 and calling bullshit on it and talk about planes going down? A lot of people were anxious flyers to this was very close to 9/11. Right. And then he would always end with his usual line, well, I tell you what, now again, we're on the flight. I tell you what, if and when this flight goes down, I know exactly where my black ass is going. I'm going to the black box and holding on to that motherfucker tight. When they find it black, they're going to find something black, all right. And so it was all,
they always recover the black box.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. And so there's so many colorful stories that just stick with you. And one of the joys of being so close, I was there to bear witness to it. And it just is. And one of the wonderful things, as Tash Mosley always says, you produced the end of your dad's life, and seeing to it that he was still out there, that he was still insulated. I relocated my brother Gregory to New York when I finally said, look, Pop needs to have he needs to be in a care environment where he's surrounded with care. And we knew he wasn't going to go into any assisted living situation. So relocated my brother Greg, moved him into the exact same building my dad lived in, but moved into a handicap unit, accessible unit with bars on the wall. Mm-hmm. And so when my dad he was happy. I said, Dad, Greg's coming here. He's going to start driving for Uber. And my dad knows DC like the back of his hand. I said, do you mind if he drives for you like you used to let me drive for you, just so he can learn the city? And that's the only reason and I'm sure in his mind, he was happy because he knew he had become such a terrible driver. So my brother Greg wound up driving him and it only wound up being 8 months before my dad I had no idea. I thought we had another 5-10 years and this system would be in place. And when he first walked in Gregory's apartment and saw the handicap holding thing, he pulled me aside and said, hey, Doc, your brother must really be fucked up to need an apartment like this. But meanwhile, it was, my dad would eat cayenne pepper like most people eat candy. Meanwhile, it was cayenne pepper over all the bars from him using them all. And so it was just cute to be able to, the same thing that, parents do to us as kids. Hey, eat your vegetables. They pretend like it's an airplane, to allow him to have the decency of not being told this is what you need, but providing. And literally within 1 week, that apartment that was built for my dad, he didn't know, he never stepped foot into his apartment again, moved all of his stuff down there and just was like, oh, I'm hanging out with my son. So he hung out with his son. He hung out with his son when my brother Greg was driving, when we were and they were like the odd couple. They both called complaining about each other. It was a beautiful thing. I mean, it was because it was rooted in love. And, it was, these are the things, these are the decisions in a moment's time that if you're not present, you miss the writing on the wall. And, it's at the time, my brother Greg's relationship with my dad was nowhere near what the closeness that my dad and I shared, but it quickly became that. Like he quickly became and it really, I'm certain to this day that Greg's had a better place because of so much closure and so much closeness and being able to provide such a pivotal amount of support, regardless of who your parent is, being able to be supportive to them like they were of you, it really is heartwarming. It absolutely is. But no, up until the day we lost him, there was entirely too much laughing that was going on. Folks were coming in, the medical staff, like, what is going, it's like laughing gas leaking out of one of these pipes in here. Folks are in here with this guy in bad shape and he's got them all in stitches. It just was the life cycle can be a beautiful thing. Too many times in this country, we turn the birthing process and the dying process into a medical emergency. And sometimes we need to step back, allow things to play out, and just surround each other with love. Quality of life is more important than quantity. So my dad had a beautiful life. After he passed, I heard all the conspiracy theories. The person who was happiest about the Dick Gregory dead conspiracy theories was Dick Gregory. He would have been pissed off. He would have been pissed off if his folks were, if they didn't think there was some conspiring. And what I tell folks, it's the true, let us have a victory. We have one man in this film so beautifully depicts who lived his life the way he wanted to, was his own moral compass, his own North Star. He didn't have anyone that showed him a blueprint. He left us one. This film depicts that. Let's take the baton where he's handing it to us. Let's take it, let's grab it firmly, and let's do better.
Christian, you've been so giving of your time. It's been a blessing. It's all about, man. Been an awesome conversation. I only have a few more questions if you're good. And I know this is going to be a tough question, but give it a shot. What would you say is your dad, Dick Gregory's most significant achievement? Is it activist achievement? Is it comic achievement? Health-related achievement? Political achievement?
I get asked that question a lot, and it's not as hard as you might think for me to answer. Without skipping a beat, his contribution to the health and wellness space, without a doubt about it. When you think of the civil rights movement, would have went on with or without Dick Gregory. Entertainment's entertainment, right? So it's not like, because that entertainer didn't come, the world will never be the same. The largest demographic of folks becoming vegetarians and vegans in 2021 are Black women. When you look back and trace back in Black households and Black grandparents, the number one book that really kind of introduced Black Americans to healthy living was Dick Gregory's Cooking with Mother Nature. So Dick Gregory's Natural Diet for Folks Who Eat, Cooking with Mother Nature. After my dad's autobiography, it's the number 2 selling book of his. And 100 years, 200 years from now, the benefit to Black folks and Black DNA is going to be so significantly increased and improved. Mindful about what you put in your mouth, what you put in your mind, our skin's our largest non-glandular organ, what we rub on our bodies, shaving products, what we brush our teeth with. My dad used to travel with the box from a tube of Crest toothpaste, and he'd always pick someone in the audience and have them read that part in there about if you swallow more than a pea size of it, and it says contact poison control. I mean, he was always about kind of shock and awe in showing you that you go out here on the front line protesting all of the valid things we should be protesting, but then you come home and you embrace the things that are killing us. The refined white sugar, refined white flour, high fructose corn syrup, all of these things, fried foods, all of these things, meat products, you don't have to be all in. No one ever said you have to do Dick Gregory's level, but definitively we can do better. So I would say no question about it. And the film really does, for some folks, it's a little off-putting how much time the film spends on my dad's contribution to nutrition, but it really, Dave Chappelle touches on this in the film where he says, hey, Dick Gregory, telling folks that, the water drinking man, how important it is to drink water, 8 ounce glasses a day. Without a doubt, the most important contribution from Dick Gregory is his contribution to the health and wellness space. If you go to Wellness in Nature, wellnessinnature.com, that's my dad's nutrition company. If you click on the history tab, there's just a rich history of a section. When I first went, a rich history of a section of my dad's life that a lot of people missed. In the 80s, in 88, when I first went to Baltimore to attend Morgan State University. In Plymouth, we didn't see my dad's ads because they were most in big urban areas. The drive from the airport to the school, 10, highway, massive ads of Dick Gregory's Bahamian Diet with my dad smiling in a tuxedo, toasting up the glass. I was too young to buy alcohol then, so I had my fake ID that was quite good from Boston. And I remember the place that was right next to Morgan that I'd go to buy liquor. And when the door slammed the first time I walked in there, on the back of the door was a big Dick Gregory poster pointing and looking at me. It shook me up enough that I walked out. I said, okay, Pop, I got the message. But he was everywhere. Black folks all over the country were, making significant, multiple revenue streams as, selling Dick Gregory's Bahamian Diet. So the simple answer for me, the simple answer is his contribution to health and wellness which is a contribution to humanity.
Yeah, I agree. And I always view him as maybe the first Black public figure that was a vegan, and that. And in the community, it's still sort of taboo. I have dinner parties here, and what's that? What's that? What? Where's the meat at? Where's the and it's like, try this jackfruit slider. I promise you're going to love it.
I mean, and here's the thing. Back in the 70s, being a vegan, you were health nuts. Anywhere you went, there was nothing on the menu for you. Now you go and there's 5-star restaurants that are vegan restaurants, and so. The mistake a lot of folks make, processed food is processed food. So I'm not interested in, hey, come buy these vegan, pork chops. We made them look, if you don't want meat, you don't want meat. I learned to eat for nutrition, the less ingredients. We have rules in our home, certain foods, 12 or less ingredients, certain things, snack foods, 6 or less ingredients. The ingredients can get a little crazy, and the crazier it gets, the more stuff. And I don't eat stuff, I want to eat food. And so finding that you're actually, consuming food, and food by definition has to be nutritious. And so just eating something to eat it is not food. So his contribution to that space is the most profound. Definitely, he brought dramatic attention to lifestyle changes. And some of my sickest patients were vegans and vegetarians because they weren't doing it right. So if you're not still getting a healthy, balanced diet, I mean, technically you could get a vegan and be eating French fries all day long. So if you're not getting a balanced diet and cheese, if you're not,
if you're vegetarian,
over soy. I mean, I have some folks in my family that, them and their children, all they eat is soy. And I tell them their children, when they sleep over, they're like roosters waking up everyone in the house because all the phlegm and clearing up their throat and sneeze. And I'm like, hey, read the room, folks. Something's wrong here. Listen to your body. I mentioned earlier, there's immediate immune responses and delayed. Don't just listen. Keep a food diary. Write down what you eat. Note what you feel at the time. Note what you feel a couple hours later, and note how you feel the next day. How food impacts the body is not always immediate. So to pay closer attention to what we're putting into our mind, body, and our soul is profoundly important. And Dick Gregory mastered that. He led by example on that one.
For sure. And this wouldn't be a Christian Gregory interview if I didn't ask you this question. If you had 1 month to teach an unhealthy person how to be healthy, what would be the first 3 things you would teach them? Maybe somebody that was pre-diabetic, if you need to be more specific.
Pre-diabetic, the first thing I would do with someone pre-diabetic is get them on a fast. There's countless research out here now, and I was dealing with this a lot before I retired from my practice, of just being able to reverse diabetes through completely insulating your blood sugar through fasting. So that's the first thing I would do. But the other thing is, and really it's just one thing, teach people the joys of life. If you understand, if you spend more time and this is physiological, watching waves in the ocean, watching leaves blow, watching tall grass. We've got so removed from that because we're in these buildings with HVAC. And I saw some white cat the other day talking about the benefit of walking barefoot in grass and paying people to come to his seminars, to calling it grounding. And I said, what the hell? I said, what are you? I said, we've gotten that. I'm going to have a seminar tell people the benefit of just, sniff the air, sniff the air. If you just, we're calling it breathing. Like, get out of here. Like, what in the world? Have we gotten that far removed from being a human that we're paying someone else to show us how to walk in grass? So
barefoot, right.
And so I would take folks, like my dad's book said, back to nature. Take them back to nature. Some of these kids have never even seen how a fruit or vegetable grows. Our phones aren't high tech. The fact you can put a seed in the earth and it germinates and manifests and bears fruit, like, Mother Nature is amazing. To sit back and, like we used to do as a family, to meditate hours early in the morning, watch the sun come up, listen to the breeze and start to understand, hey, it kind of sounds like, and it sounds odd or kooky, hey, the universe is kind of talking to us. You slow down and you listen. Here's a prime example. Whenever there's a big tsunami that hits someplace, all the animals roll out, 6 hours to a day ahead of time. But, us smart mammals in our devices, like, I don't know where they're going. They're stupid. Are they? They're grounded and connected. We are not. Reconnect. There's nothing more important to humanity, nothing than the environment, protecting the environment and the universe. So I would take them and get them to drink, water. Stop drinking all the aids, Gatorade, Kool-Aid, lemonade, all these aids, and get back to drinking water. If you took your dog out on a hike in 100-degree temperature, your dog's not coming back wanting a beer or wanting a lemonade. They want water. And so the human body, mammals need water, anything other than that. And so sure, do I put some lime in my water if I want electrolytes when it's real hot? Yes, but learn to enjoy, the taste and freshness of water, in true water. Most people are drinking water in unsealed plastic containers, and the difference between sealed and unsealed, if it's clear like glass and you can see through it, that means the plastic's sealed on both sides. Still not the best choice, but much better than cloudy plastic. So like milk jug cloudy plastic, you are that's cancer. These jugs are sitting in hot trucks and boiling like tea, all the plastics leaching into them. And then we're wondering why everyone in the house has some new type of cancer and tumors growing in the body. We're just not thinking. The delivery, most of the food that's on our plate has flown more miles in its cycle than we do in our lifetime to get to our plate. So buying locally, finding local produce, getting, understanding, aquaponics and growing your own food. And you can do this in an urban environment. There's some beautiful systems. A lot of the hotels I go to now like to showcase they're growing their own herbs in a self-enclosed environment, no pesticides. No, we are what we eat. That is literal and literally and figuratively, that is true. So we need to do better. And so those are some of the things my dad would do to detox folks. But you also have to realize sugar's the cocaine of the food industry. And you do need to, it's what we call the sugar blues. You do need to detox the microbes in your body, Candida albicans, the yeast in your body. They love sugar. And they secrete things that make the body feel good. So part of us, I feel good eating this sugar, is because the microbes in the body are loving it because it's fueling their growth. And when you remove that from your diet, they start to release things in the body that make you not feel so good. In your mind, you think, no, I need that sugar. I feel better. No, you have to allow, it's like a drug addict weaning off of anything. You have to break that dependency. And then by then, just because the way we were raised, a cold glass just a glass of fresh carrot juice always tasted better than a milkshake. And if it tastes that way to me, it could taste that way to everyone. You just have to retrain your brain. And there's no milkshake in the world that's worth taking years off of my life. And so there's no food. And that's what you need to ask yourself. Are these hot dogs and hamburgers so amazing that if I got to chop 15 years off my life, 20 years off my quality of life, because you look in our community, everyone scooting along. First it's the toes, then it's the foot, then it's the leg. If I lost a fingernail, I'm going to be alarmed and make some changes. We got folks in our community losing whole limbs, and there's not alarm bells going off. And so, diabetes just runs in my, no. It runs because you eat the same way your parents ate the same way your grandparents ate. You are passing that curse along. We have to be more involved. Physical fitness, taking care of our mind and the body, and controlling what we put into our body.
I think that's a beautiful answer. And for those keeping score at home, first step is fast. Second step, get back to nature. Third step, drink water. And a bonus fourth step, detox off of sugar.
There it is. You captured it nicely. I never said that before, so I need you to send. That's my new list. I need you to send me that.
Yeah, absolutely. I will. And Dr. Christian Gregory, this has been an absolute blast. I've learned so much, as I knew I would. Why don't you tell everybody, educate them on where they can find you on social media, on the internet, where they can see some of your work, where they can buy some of your stuff, and where they can see this great documentary.
Excellent. And thank you for having me. This has been fun, Chris. We've chopped it up. It's a lot of information. As Gregory's, we love, to put information out. The worst thing you'd ever want to have happen to you is have someone you know or love lose their life just because you simply didn't know something. So, yes. Hey, the fire alarm's going off. Well, if you can't hear it, that really, that's unfortunate. So, the fire alarm's been going off. We're given information. We're given resources. My dad's work is everywhere, as you know, all over YouTube, local bookstores. Of his 16 books, 5 of them we've republished. We just released his autobiography, Nigger. It's in Japan. So
love that. Great book.
A good friend of mine who works with Sony was explaining to me, white man, translating the title for me. And I said, whoa, you translated that a little too quick, my friend. So it is, it's just, read the books, take the information in. The Real Dick Gregory on Instagram, Dr. Christian Gregory on Instagram. I believe it's all the same monikers on Facebook and on Twitter. I'm really most active on Instagram because I feel like the format and how most people live their life in snippets and bursts of information. Images are so powerful. My dad would always say, in the future, we won't communicate in writing or in spoken word. It'll be images, and that's what hieroglyphics were, and that's what emojis are. So you can have a teenager anywhere in the world communicate with emojis, and they understand what they're saying. So that pendulum's coming back. We're simplifying things, and when humanity as a whole can communicate, and there's not as much lost in translation, the potential for better things to happen. The amount of war and fights and destruction that is from misunderstandings, we decrease the chance of misunderstanding each other when we're all, able to communicate freely and properly. So I would say, go out, study Dick Gregory. And although the film comes out Sunday, 4th of July, it streams all day on the 4th of July. So it doesn't have to cut into your 4th of July celebration. No one fought for independence more than Dick Gregory. The color almost looks like fireworks coming off of the key art. I'd like for everyone to see the film. Let's make a commitment right now. Chris will circle back on the backside and chop it up after the film. Take as many questions as it relates to the film, and just as it relates to what's next. But by all means, I'll make this commitment here to you, Chris. I'll always, if your platform's always open to me, I'll always come on and discuss what we're doing, big or small, what's new, what's next. There's a lot of exciting things. So I look forward to discussing it. But for right now, just want folks to get out, sit in your home on your devices, and not watch, but experience the one and only Dick Gregory.
That is a beautiful way to end this. I will take that invitation up. I had pages and pages and pages of notes. I knew we'd run out of time before we ran out of topics.
This isn't a one or done. So, to be continued.
To be continued, indeed. Thank you for everything you've meant to me, my family, my business partner, Nick. Thank you so much. And I can't wait to see the documentary on Sunday. Take care, man.
We'll talk soon. Take care, brother. Peace to you and the family.
Thanks, Christian. Bye.